So today I'm gonna start the video series, or I just might do this in one giant video. I'm gonna start answering some of your questions. Remember a couple of videos back we did a question and answer? Well, let's start answering some of them. So someone asked me how old I was. I'm 51 and I'm gonna be 52 in February. Lime addition, difference between worms. Okay, the reason I add lime, and it's got to be dolomite lime, is because my arm's getting tired. I didn't bring my tripod out here, of course. Is because it reduces the acidity in the worm bin. Certain beddings and foods can make your worm bin really acid, and acidic will kill your worms, so that's not good. I add about a tablespoon, maybe a little less, to like my bin that's like 20 by 15 by 5. The ideal acidity is 7, and there's no difference between the worms. They all need the same thing. Someone in Utah asked, will winter kill her worms if she keeps her wigglers outside? Yes, they will. Red wigglers are very resilient. I've had them in my garage, and it's gotten as low as 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And they didn't die. They did go dormant and stopped eating as much, but it's almost like they went to sleep. If you put them outside in a bin, they will die. But if you put them in your garden, like in the ground, they will go down and then they'll come back in the spring, because that's what I do with my outdoor worm bin. How much water and how often? Well, to breed a worm bin, let's see, for breeding worm bins, the moisture should be about, I would say about 80% moisture. Now, that doesn't mean you add enough water to have the water sitting at the bottom, because they'll drown. They need to breathe. So I have a battery operated watering machine that I charge, and I take it and I just press the button. It waters everything really fast. So I just do like a once over. And then, I check my worm bins. You like my shirt, guys? Just a girl who loves Bigfoot. I check my worm bins every day. Just to see what they're doing. I don't water every day, but I go by what I feel with my hand. My wormery, you've always seen it, is downstairs in my house, and it's indoors, and the room is insulated, and it's like my son's old bedroom. So I go by what I feel. If I feel I have to water more, then I'll just do it. Sometimes people could tell you all these measurements and everything, but the best thing is experience, and you will develop that in time. So someone asked what kind of music I listen to. I like everything. I'm Cuban, and I like Cuban music, but I'm Cuban American. I'm like the only American that was born in my family in this country. All my brothers were born in Cuba. Everyone's in Cuba except me. So I grew up listening to 80s rock, and that's what, I've always liked. I love Metallica. Master of Puppets and Enter Sandman are my favorite songs. So if you haven't heard them, you should, look them up. And I like heavy metal. But then, I always loved George Michael and Madonna too. So, but usually rock and heavy metal are my go-to. Look at the leaves outside. Look at the trees, how beautiful. So anyway, I'm gonna keep answering this because I've got to go to work. And I'll be back. Okay, can you raise worms in Texas? Yes. We lived in Texas for about 8 years, and my first worms were in Texas, but I had them indoors. And I know you said your wife doesn't want them indoors. Maybe you could put them inside the garage if they bug her. I think the garage will be okay, but you got to remember Texas, and it's very, very hot. I don't know what part of Texas you're talking about, but we lived about 45 minutes northwest of Houston in a subdivision called Fairfield, and it was hot constantly, so I had my worms inside. So you got to remember, if they hit 90 degrees, your worms are going to die. Plus, I know Texas has fire ants, and if fire ants get in your bin, your worms are done. So Texas, I would keep them in the garage and keep them moist. And if you see that they get too hot, I would put a couple of ice cubes on the surface, or indoors. I mean, try to convince her. Get a worm tower. Show her how cute they are. I have a purple one in my kitchen. Carbon-rich diet for night crawlers. Yes, there are certain worms that like to eat more carbon than green. African night crawlers love cardboard and newspaper and boxes. They just love it. That glue that's inside the boxes that you see, they love that glue. So feed your worms boxes. And I noticed that my African night crawlers do better when I give them more carbon. European night crawlers, I think, are in the middle. They like both. And red wigglers do okay, but red wigglers, at least in my personal experience, like more food. So that's the difference with them. So why do I sift my worms 21 days? Because after 21 days, they would have had cocoons, each one. And you got a lot of worms in there, so there's going to be a lot of cocoons. So at the 21 day, I sift it out for breeding purposes before they hatch. That's the thing. Worm cocoons, look, that's Olive. Someone asked me who Olive was. There's Olive. Worm cocoons hatch 3 to 4 weeks after they're laid. I mean, approximately. That all depends on temperature of the bin, your room, your environment. But the goal is to sift it 21 days after you set them up to get the cocoons, and then set the cocoons up in another bin to hatch. And that's basically how you create worms in large amounts of quantities. And that's how the commercial worm farmers who do it indoors do it. Some of them won't tell you that, but I will. It's an entire process. It just takes some practice and learning. It's taken me time to learn it, because honestly, no one would give you a straight answer. No one would give me a straight answer when I asked. So I just had to figure these things out by myself. So that's why I do that. So someone asked me what my favorite flower is. I love roses, but honestly, my favorite flower, and it's more of an herb, is chamomile. I love chamomile. I love the way they smell. I love the tea. I just love everything about chamomile. I even have a tattoo of chamomile on my arm. I'm obsessed with chamomile. So the liquid I spray on my worm bins is to create microbes, because microbes are what feed the worms, and it just gets them excited, because when there's more microbes, they're like, ooh, there's more food. Worms love anything sweet. They love sugar. Oh gosh, there's a bee. I have so many bloopers. I'm going to put them at the end of this video. I hope you see them. So someone asked me, what's the purpose of using the heating mats underneath the cocoon bins? Well, it's to bring the temperature of the bin higher, because cocoons hatch when the bin hits about 80 degrees. The warmer it is, the faster they hatch. I guess it incubates them, I don't know. But I don't use them, because so far in my room, they're doing okay. But if I ever need to use that, I will. So a lot of people do use containers that have holes in the bottom so that leachate can come out. Don't use that leachate. It's toxic. It's toxic to your plants, your food. It's like the negative byproduct of worms, just like pee. Like, don't use it. The way I manage my bins is just by checking them every day and not adding too much water to it, and feeling it with my hands. And if I over wet a bin and I really want it more dry, I just add more cardboard or more shredded paper. It's balance. Everything with worm farming is balance. Even the business part of it is balance. It just is. And yeah, don't use the leachate. If you have leachate coming out of your bins are way too wet. So yes, you can raise African night crawlers in a tote. The bedding is like for every other worm, except add a little more cardboard, because that's what they like. And I'm going to tell you a secret. How many African night crawlers do you put in a standard bin? 50. Don't put more than 50. Just make sure they're adult worms. They have the clitellum. And when you put them in there, try not to mess with them too much, except for watering and feeding. Because if you do, they're not going to lay a lot of cocoons for you. They just don't like to be messed around with. If you're moving, if you want to take your worms with you, you can. Just pack them up somewhere in the back of the van or car or wherever, where you'll have easy access to them in case you need to like peek at them. Honestly, if it's a long drive, like 19 hours or something, I would stop. Like when you go to stop at a rest stop to pee, I would just peek at them and they'll do fine. Just keep an eye on them. Or before you move, you could give someone your worms for free or sell them. You know, I don't know, make someone happy, give them your worms. You'll just get more when you reach your destination. So the best nursery bin for cocoons, once you extract the cocoons from the bedding, is to set them up in a little bin. When I set up cocoons, mine are 20 by 15 by 5. The depth of the bedding isn't very deep, so what I do is when I take the cocoons out of the how do I explain this? When I sift my cocoons out of my bedding, the cocoons with the baby worms and the castings that fall, I reuse that. I do add a little more bedding to it, and I moisten it up and I cover it with wet newspaper and I reuse that. And basically that's how you do it. And you just cover them, make sure they're moist, and you wait, you know, 3 to 4 weeks until they hatch. I know they're hatching when I start seeing like the newspaper have a hole in it because they're starting to eat it. That's how I know. And that's when I start adding chow, a little bit at a time. You got to give them a chance. So you don't want to overfeed it because then you'll get mold. So that's how I do it. And then you'll, before you know it, they'll grow up and you'll have a million of them. So if your bin is too wet, add more dry stuff until you get it to the moisture that you want. Someone asked that they put 15 worms in a bin. You know, how long is it going to take them to multiply? Well, it takes about 3 weeks for the cocoons for you to start seeing them. And then after that, they hatch in about 3 to 4 weeks. And then about 8 weeks after that, you'll have adults. So if you're just doing it for composting purposes, I wouldn't add a lot of food because you're going to overwhelm the bin. Just do a little bit at a time. And before you know it, you're going to have a million of them and they're going to be everywhere. No, I don't have a humidifier or anything like that in my worm room because my worm room is inside my house and it's all temperature controlled from my house. I don't feel I need any of that. And also, when I start a new bin for breeding purposes, I feed them my worm chow. Now, if I start a tower for composting purposes, they eat my food scraps. The shelves that you see in my worm room, we got at Menards. But Joe bought an extra set to remove the shelves from it and to put the shelves in between so that I have more room. I've seen people do it with wood and it's wonderful. Right now, the price of wood here is very expensive. And for time's sake and that purpose, we just bought the shelves. I know that I'll have them for a long time. He painted them so that if they get wet, they don't absorb the water. So I love the way it looks. I love organization and cleanliness, and I think it looks great. This is Nina, guys. This is my little chihuahua. Where'd she go? Look at all the leaves. So I hope I answered all your questions. If you have more questions, you know you can ask in below my video and I will answer them to the best of my ability. I see every comment that you guys leave me, and I love all the kind words that you say and just the encouragement that you give me to just keep going with my wormery. Worm business is hard work and it's very dirty, and like any business, you just have to give it your all. A business to be lifted from the ground takes about 2 to 4 years. So right now I'm starting my 2nd year, and I'm hoping that, you know, it will continue. I have no doubt it wouldn't. And that's basically it. I'm gonna I lost my train of thought. Olive. Olive, what are you doing? Hi, Olive. Olive is a good girl. So I know you guys see Joe. Joe helps me a lot around the wormery, the house. He's like the one that builds everything for me, assembles things, and surprises me quite often with things that he knows that I need or could use. He's a great husband. We've been married 25 years, and we've been together about 28 years. We have 4 kids, and it's been a roller coaster ride for us sometimes, moving from state to state. But you know, we've done it, and we live out of here in the country, and we love it, and we're happy. And you know, I have my worms. He likes the worms, but he knows that's more my thing. So I like messing with them more than anything. And my kids have been raised around the worms. We have 4 kids, and they've known wormery also. And I'm hoping that when my daughters get married, they'll have their own worms too. My sons don't have worms. One of them is in the military and he's on base and does all his thing there. And the other one travels a lot. So we'll see. Maybe the girls will have the worms. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Thank you for your questions. And don't think my Halloween video is too crazy. So how did I get into worm farming? Well, it started out as a hobby, and I'm a gardener, so I needed some kind of organic fertilizer that wouldn't hurt my plants or my kids. Our youngest, Izzy, she would go in the garden, and this girl would put everything in her mouth. So my biggest fear was if I put some kind of chemical, a spray, that she'd get very sick. So I started doing my research, you know, with one of those old giant dinosaur computers. And I discovered YouTube, this lady named Christy Ruffner. And she had these giant beds. And she would only feed manure. We're talking giant. If you look her up, you'll find her. She doesn't make videos anymore. I don't even know if she's still living. But I got interested in that. And then getting them was a whole nother experience. You know, my mom was visiting, and it was close to my birthday. So my mom's like, what do you want for your birthday? I'll get you that new Gucci purse. I'm like, I don't want the Gucci purse. She thought I wanted another type of purse. I said, can I have worms? She's like, excuse me? I said, no, for real, can I have worms? So I had to show her the video. I had to sell her the idea. So anyway, she ended up getting me my first worms. So I hope you enjoy all my videos. The Halloween one is coming out soon. So every year I create this Halloween video that's like ridiculous. It gets crazier every year. But, you know, I love doing it. I love editing. And, you know, I'm very curious about a lot of things. So you're going to see in that Halloween video how curious I am about something. So anyway, I laugh a lot. I know. Bye. So I'm going to end this video here. I'm not sure how long it is. Anyway, as usual, if you like my content, press that subscribe button. Hey, you know what? I see a lot of people watching me and they are not subscribed. YouTube shows me those things. Press that subscribe button. Press the little bell so you know when I'm coming on. And I appreciate you all. And I will see you next time. Take care.